So I've decided to set out on a mission, not to just try every single roast beef po' boy I can find in this city, but to rate every roast beef po' boy I can find in this city. And this is the first episode in that little journey. So if there's one meal I've eaten more than any other meal in my life, it'd be the roast beef po' boy. Now, I'm not saying I'm like Dave Portnoy in pizza, but at the end of the day, I've eaten more than my fair share. All right, now growing up in a family that owns a po' boy restaurant certainly contributed to me eating a whole bunch of roast beef. Yes, that's true, but I've eaten roast beef po' boys all over this city. By the way, if you haven't seen the episode about our family's short-stop restaurant, actually, we'll put that in the link in the description down below. Now, a lot of visitors that come down to New Orleans aren't even sure what a po' boy is, quite frankly, and they get a whole lot more confused when, of course, they ask if you want it dressed. And for good reason. That sounds definitely a bit weird, right? All right, well, let me help you out with that. So essentially, in 1922, the Martin brothers, they opened up this coffee house and restaurant down in the French Market area. You see, in 1929, though, there's this huge strike between the railroad union workers and essentially the city of New Orleans over the potential loss of thousands of jobs. So the Martin brothers were rather sympathetic, I guess, towards the strikers, right? They felt bad. They wanted to feed them. So they saw them just about every day. And of course, when those poor boys came in or near the shop, they offered them free food, essentially the po' boy sandwich. So the very first po' boy sandwich was basically a French loaf with French fries and essentially a gravy, like a debris from the roast beef that they serve. So to be honest, there's still a lot of debate as to what the first po' boy sandwich actually was. Either which way, those sandwiches were indeed free. Now, one thing that's not really in debate is where that French bread came from. Typically, most people think it was Jendousa's bakery. Either which way, the po' boy sandwich or the poor boy sandwich was born. What does dressed mean? It does differ at certain locations. Most places say dressed is lettuce, tomatoes, and mayonnaise. Now, some people add pickles. I've had places that put onions in their full definition of fully dressed, if you will. Now, sometimes, especially on my tours, when I ask people if they've had a po' boy sandwich, they don't even realize a po' boy sandwich can be something other than fried oyster, fried shrimp, fried fish, whatever. But to be honest, probably one of the most iconic versions would be the roast beef po' boy. Now, I probably thought about this a little bit longer than I should have, but I was thinking about the criteria of the rating system. So I think it comes down to three things. It's going to be one, the meat, right? Two, the bread, and three, the gravy. All right, so the meat first, of course. Most places tend to use top round. Some places will use chuck roast. I've heard places actually using totally different cuts, like flank steak, actually out there. And look, every different one of those cuts of meat is going to produce a totally different taste component. All right, now as far as the bread goes, look, in New Orleans, there's usually two bakeries most people know. It's either Leidenheimer's or it's Jendousa's bakery. I'm not going to be a snob when it comes to the bread and where the bakery or the bread comes from, what bakery it does. Because at the end of the day, I know in New Orleans there are a whole hell of a lot of good bakeries out there. So as long as that bread is nice on the outside, I mean a nice crust, and fluffy on the inside, the way it's supposed to be, look, it's going to rate just as high as the one coming from Leidenheimer's or Jendousa. And really, that said, the bread is kind of like the undercarriage of a pizza. You see, at the end of the day, it's really, really important. Next up, the gravy. Look, everybody and their mom in New Orleans knows how to make a roux. That doesn't mean it's a good roux. You see, it's difficult to make a good roux. Is it a dark roux? Is it a light roux? Is there a roux used at all, quite frankly? Some of these places, I know they just use stock and then they throw cornstarch in there, and that's perfectly fine. If the taste is there, great, right? And by the way, taste. I want to taste the gravy, quite frankly. Is there garlic in there? Is a lot of garlic in there? Is there ever any too much garlic? But you know what? A gravy can be a little too much. gravy can be bitter. Now, I want to be fair here. When I go to each one of these establishments, when it comes to the po' boy being dressed, you see some places do use different components for their dressed definition. So I am going to be fair. However, the establishment itself says that that's their way, it's fully dressed, that's the way I'm going to judge the po' boy. So in a lot of people's conversation for the best po' boy, not just roast beef po' boy in New Orleans, is actually Parkway Tavern and Bakery. Now, Parkway Tavern and Bakery is known for a lot of things. A lot of celebrities that come through here, you name it. I mean, musicians. Hell, I just saw a picture of Gordon Ramsay on the wall. So this place is super, super popular. But is it the best roast beef po' boy in town? I don't know, but I'm definitely going to give it a shot. Showing a case in point. I didn't ask for pickles on this po' boy. We just said fully dressed, and sure enough, it came with pickles. So there you go. The first bite, by the way, the meat is cooked down perfectly. It's absolutely, really, really flavorful. The gravy is a bit subtle. There's no overpowering taste to the flavor. There's a perfect amount of mayonnaise, of course, lettuce, tomato. It really works. And I gotta tell you, I'm really liking it. Now, I'll tell you this. Any good roast beef po' boy is going to be messy. It's gonna be messy as hell, quite frankly. That is a good sign of a roast beef po' boy, a good roast beef po' boy. Again, though, the gravy is quite subtle. It's not overpowering in any way. The bread, I already know, actually, po' boy coming here to Parkway po' boys so much that this is Leidenheimer's bread. So I'm very familiar with it because this is the same bread that my family actually uses. You know, I think at the end of the day, it's always tough to rate so high on a scale of 1 to 10, right? Especially right off the bat, where this is the first review I'm ever gonna do. I don't want to just be like, oh, this is 10 out of 10, but it's definitely up there. I'm gonna give this an 8.9. An 8.9. Parkway Tavern and Bakery roast beef sandwich, 8.9. All right, guys, that's gonna wrap up today's episode. So first po' boy challenge, if you will, 8.9 in the books with Parkway Tavern and Bakery. Now look, this should be on your list anyway. At the end of the day, even if it's not roast beef, you should be coming here, guys. This is the spot. This is one of the main spots in New Orleans for po' boy sandwiches. So come give them some love, please. By the way, like and subscribe, of course, as always. If you guys are coming down for a trip to New Orleans and you want to do a private tour with us, look us up at privatetoursneworleans.com. And of course, as always, c'est la vie.